And there is another statistic, which is something like people are 80% more likely to put a bad review online. So that typically people tend to review when they're dissatisfied rather than when they're happy, so that's something to consider as well. So if you like a product, review it. That's like one of the best things you can do.
Erin, welcome to the Oxford Talks podcast. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure to see you in person because we've been interacting since 2017 at the very beginning when we were doing the TEDx thing back then. And you kindly gave us, I think back then it was called nibble protein, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you gave us nibble proteins and I was absolutely heartbroken when all of my team had eaten everything and then didn't leave me anything.
That's a good sign.
So I went out myself and bought it myself because they were all telling me how great it was, and that's why it ran out so quick.
Fantastic.
And since then, we have kept in touch. Your journey has sort of, from where we met, from where we are today, it's just been such an inspiring one. We'll talk more about it. But for the people who are not from, let's say, food industry, who don't know what you do, absolutely new audience, how are you going to describe yourself to them today?
So Nibble simply makes really clean, lower sugar snacks and chocolates. So for us, the USP is we want really healthy food and to make it easier for people to eat healthy food, but without compromising on flavor.
And how do you achieve that?
So for us, we're all about, we're really ingredient led. So I'm super fussy about the ingredients that we use. And largely, there's a lot of technical sort of food science that's really complicated when you make lower sugar food. And that's why there aren't a lot of options. Most products are either they are really clean, but they're very high in sugar, like a lot of the date-based products, or you get products that are really low in sugar, but they've got lots of sort of Frankenstein ingredients. So we wanted that kind of sweet spot, which was still clean, but lower sugar. So all of our goodies are sweetened with a low GI coconut sugar or coconut nectar.
I want to ask, for the people who are maybe listening to these terms for the first time, what's a Frankenstein ingredient?
That's just my own.
I thought it's an industry term I don't know about.
No, that's just my own language. I just think it's, they tend to be sugar alcohols. There'll be all of the really ultra processed ingredients, which you would not find in your kitchen, basically. So for example, when you look at some ingredient decks of foods, the list of ingredients, they might have 20 ingredients, for example. So for us, all of our products are made with just a handful of the finest ingredients. So there are no emulsifiers. So emulsifiers are one of the really big, in my view, Frankenstein ingredients. They're really ultra processed. You would never, ever, ever have it in your kitchen. And those have a lot of, they've been found to have lots of negative health implications. So we're just about clean and genuinely tasty foods.
You didn't start your journey from food, so it's not like, which was in a complete, so you went to uni and then you studied fine arts, and then there was a kind of a minor in marine biology.
Exactly.
I think,
and literature. So I did 2 degrees and a minor.
Food manufacturing and marine biology. How did that transition happen?
Well, I think like weirdly when you step back a little bit, it sort of makes sense. So I'm kind of quite a creative person, which I think really helps when it comes to the branding and the product side of things. But then I have like a really sort of scientific side to me. And usually those two things don't come in sort of one person. So most people tend to be either kind of quite artistic or they have this kind of more analytical kind of scientific. So I'm just this kind of weird hybrid, probably not the master of all, as you know, but enough of sort of each element to sort of just create this different hybrid.
And I suppose that's how it needs to be for a successful business to run, because at times people have seen that if you are like let's say from the tech world, if you're like someone who is a master of coding or something, but they're terrible at sales and marketing.
Exactly.
So they might have created like the absolute wonderful product, but if no one knows about it. So I think I tend to feel like most successful business owners or CEOs, they have to have this kind of a T-shaped kind of a depth to it. Like there is something, one or two aspects they're just absolutely masters of, but they have to have like a little bit of kind of an overarching view of a lot of other things. If they just don't believe in marketing, if they don't believe in research, then it's the 3-year company or a 5-year company.
Absolutely.
Is that something that you have already, so did you embrace this kind of like a multidisciplinary kind of an aspect to you, or was it something that you initially, because as initially when you start businesses, and I'm guilty of that, you just think, oh, I'm just gonna do everything myself. Oh, I know this, I can, because it gives you like the false assumption that you know a little bit of it. You just think you can do like an expert.
Yeah,
I wouldn't touch accounts whatsoever, because although yes, I have a business
absolutely.
degree, but no, I can't do those. How was that transition for you, or was there even one in the first place?
Well, on the food science side of things, so what I was quite naive when I went into the whole the idea of setting up this business. What had happened is I was working out of the commercial arm of the BBC, and I was marathon training. And because I have some chronic health issues, I was trying to find a way to really maintain my fitness and get the right diet whilst I was in a really busy work environment. So I needed something that I could kind of nibble on the way to meetings. Because I was like running 13 campaigns, I was art directing and producing, and like I would literally have time to eat in like stairwells of our building. So I needed
Wow.
something that was like bite-sized. And I wanted something that was low glycemic index because I had just been sort of turned on to that way of eating by a nutritionist, and it was really effective. So then I started looking at sort of what was on the market, and I realized that just nothing fit the bill. So it was at that point I was like, okay, this feels like this is an opportunity and it's a business. And I was trying to work out what my next business would be because I had run a photo agency for 17 years before that. And then, yeah, I sort of assumed that I would have like the general idea and I would kind of come up with a general recipe. But I thought like a manufacturer would work out the food science side of things,
Yeah.
which is not how it works, which I didn't realize. So I raised funding. And then I had to work out how to create a lower sugar product that was shelf stable. And there's a reason why there aren't very many products like that around. It's because it's technically really, really difficult. Because sugar is what helps with the shelf life and it helps with the mouthfeel. So when you reduce the sugar, then it becomes really complicated.
Really? Oh, so the more sugar you have in, let's say, a product, the also it's like a business decision rather than like a ingredient decision, like what to put in.
Well, so the way that it works is that with there's something called available water,
Mm.
and when you're working on creating a product which is shelf stable, you need the water, the available water, to be below a certain amount. It has to be below 0.59 water activity, and that is the point at which microbial in bacteria can't grow. So products that are really high in sugar, like Twinkies, for example. You know how
Mm.
Twinkies, I mean, this is an American reference because I'm American, but Twinkies have a shelf life of like 20 years or something because they're just like this bowl of, sugar. But as soon as you reduce the sugar binds to the water molecules. So when you take the sugar away, then you're more likely to get mold. And so that's why you have this
Oh,
like massive technical challenge. So I spent about a year trying to, I had to teach myself food science. I worked with a few consultants, but ultimately they would just give you some kind of like top line advice. And I just had to find a way to make it work. So I, was working in my kitchen with spreadsheets, working out because I was trying to create functional products that were high protein, low in sugar, high in fiber. So there was like there are legal definitions for each of those areas.
mm.
So yeah, I mean, it just kind of happened because no one else could do it for me. So I just had to work it out. But it was lucky that I think I probably have that science background and my brain just sort of works a bit like that. And then on the other side, because I'm creative, I wanted them to look a certain way. And, which it turns out was not necessarily the easiest thing in terms of manufacturing,
Yeah.
but Yeah.
We were talking just before our conversation. We were talking about Dragon's Den and Shark Tank in America, Shark Tank. Um, and I've certainly started consumed a lot of episodes of that one, and it's always the moment food products or something like drinks they come up, all the investors are like, oh, it's just so hard. And so because it's one of those businesses that again, for us, we are always into media and finance and all of that, like consumer businesses. I've never even thought about how complicated it can be, and through that I realized that like how creating an amazing product is one thing, and a lot of people start with, like, for example, let's just like your story, something for themselves, and they might be coming from a certain culture, and a certain product is consumed in that culture, and they're like, oh, the whole world needs to have this, and they start with that, and then the reality of being in the market hits, that you have to pay for the shelf space, and retailers will ask you a huge sums of money just to for the like put you in the place where you actually sell the product. And then again, these kind of things will kick in, like, oh, if I'm doing all of that and I need more shelf space, and it just became so complicated in my head, and I was like, I'll just shoot myself in head if I had to do like this kind of a product. Like, it's just so complicated,
Yeah.
and the margins are so low as well. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like a 60,000 pound product.
No, I mean,
How?
what I found most complicated, which I never really had an understanding of before I started, is that retailers usually demand 80% shelf life. So with our products, we have a year shelf life. So they demand that you deliver with at least 80% of that shelf life. So it basically means you typically only have 3 to 4 months to sell your product.
Before they kick you out.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
so what's really difficult is that, we work with grocery, for example, and with FMCG, you typically get 2 to 3 days notice for orders. And so you have no idea what the order size is going to be before it comes in. So you need
Really?
enough stock in order to cover the order, but you have to not have too much stock that you have too much stock lying around, in which case it'll be short dated. Short dated being, less than
Yeah.
80%, which is still, 7 months plus.
How does one keeps their mental health in check while running a business like this? I know you do running, which
Yeah.
is like you do. Did you, is that like a way you decided to cope up with all perhaps the stress that comes with the business, or that's something was there before?
Yeah. So I've been running for about 35 years. So I've been running since I was in school. And it's something which I developed a real love for after school. So when I was in university, and I love music. So I put my music on. Tends to be a lot of sort of 80s hip hop and rap and just sort of tune out. And for me, it's a place to think, and it's sort of mental laundry is what I call it. It's
I love the terminologies, Frankenstein, mental. I'm taking a note of that, and I'll walk away with a dictionary, Urban Dictionary editions.
absolutely. And I just find it so relaxing. And that's where most of my creative thinking comes. I mean, it turns out that there's actually like a real physiological reason why running is good for me in particular, because I have a nervous system disorder. So it's which basically means that it's called POTS. It's postural orthostatic tachycardia. So it means that the blood in my body doesn't move around when it's supposed to. So it's not a sort of automatic process. So actually running, as it turns out, really helps to get my blood going. So that's part of the reason why when I'm running, I'm getting so much blood to my brain that I'm suddenly, that's where I do a lot of my thinking and a lot of my problem solving. So
That's remarkable.
yeah,
You mentioned that you had the Nibble is not your first business
yeah,
for 17 years.
yeah.
How did the transition happen? And now in the hindsight, if someone would have told you like, oh, making, because we run a media company, and we feel like it's not easy either, but it's way easier than running a kind of consumer brand.
Totally.
The because we're in control of a lot of sort of creative, how it goes out and the channels and everything. It doesn't seem as complicated versus you need to expand, and okay, you need to talk to retailers in America now. It's completely different how life works there. Like every county might be different. How, if you had knew that this was this complicated, would you have kept your business with photography, or would you have like, okay, no, this is still I wanted to do it?
So when it came to so I love photography and it's one of my, great loves. And it's something which I think for me is just a kind of natural, it's just one of the things that I kind of do really well. But the industry just, as soon as the digital photography came in, it just became quite unviable at that point. So, pictures. So we used to sell in the travel sections of like every broadsheet. And it went from, pictures being on the front page of the Telegraph section would be £700. And when I sold the business, it was down to £30 for that same usage. And in all honesty, I'd been running it for 17 years, so I was getting really bored, like I just needed something different. So I'm really grateful that I had the experience of running a business with something that was infinitely more easier than FMCG, because I think that if I had to learn running a business at the same time as learning FMCG, I mean, I don't know how people do it. It's so complicated. So at least I had those kind of general sort of skills and experience from running the photo agency.
Yeah.
Um,
And what are the factors for success in someone starting in FMCG industry?
I mean, do you mean in terms of the kind of personal factors, or do you mean as like a larger
You,
brand?
as a business, because for me, the reason I ask this question is that you grew up with certain kind of food products, and then those products are not there anymore because suddenly an iteration comes off of it. For example, when I was growing up, Peak Screens, we used to do these biscuits called Prince. I don't. I think so. The space that we are in, the same landlords, they own the building which used to be a Peak Screens factory, the headquarters in Bermondsey. I visited that place. Not that I love that biscuit so much that I decided, okay, I'm gonna go visit the museum. But it certainly reminds you like, oh, these were the products of our childhood, and now I just discovered like an Asian shop which has an iteration of that, and I'm buying the same thing because it's the childhood memory that you kind of relive through those food items. But at the same time, as you mentioned, like there's a huge business aspect to it. For example, you look at these big companies like Hershey's, perhaps, or Ferrero Rocher's, all these sort of brands. They are like, I think along with Pepsi, maybe, I think Ferrero Rochers are like one of those products that are just so widely available all over the world. It's just
Mm.
unprecedented. And again, when you talk to those people who might be running, they think of it like as a supply chain, and how product can be in the wildest places on earth. And to me, that's like, okay, that might be one of the factors of success when you can call in this industry, that the sustainability of the business is there for a very long time,
Mhm.
yet keeping the taste the same. For example, the biscuits, now they're just it's just Oreos. They're just so successful as a product that so many retail chains like coffee shops, and like even I think if you go to I'm thinking of so many shops like they do these milkshakes, and they literally just call them Oreo milkshakes. And I'm pretty sure like, oh, Oreo is not probably paying them. It's just a flavor so embedded in culture
Mm.
that people are kind of making something out of it. So that's what I mean. Like when someone has that kind of a bold idea that, you know what, I perhaps grew with this product, or as in your example, like this is something I need, and you figure out like a lot of people need that. But to make it a kind of a cultural phenomena that that product lives in
Mm.
maybe in its same kind of like inception form all the way to like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, what would be the kind of a success reasons for that?
I mean, I think a point of difference is really important, and particularly when it comes to startups. Sometimes you see lots of startups who are doing kind of really similar things, and those are the ones that tend to kind of fall by the wayside. So, for example, when we started, it was around 2017 actually. We were making protein bites, so we were very much competing within the snack bar area, and that category was like chock full of products, and largely they were date based, and
Mm.
there were a lot of really similar products. So I think a point of difference is really important. Um, taste is obviously really important, but taste is, super subjective. So what, one person likes, another person won't like. It becomes more challenging when it's a lower sugar product because people love sugar. So it's trying to work out how to get the flavors to really sing with less sugar. So I think there's, for me, things like Oreo, I mean, that would have been super innovative when it first started, and no one else would have been doing that. So I think it's a combination of, of doing it well, and then hopefully you get the customer base who's going to support it.
Do you think people, especially now in UK, people are there's like I don't know if it's in implemented or not, but it's like the sugar tax that the government was thinking. Has it been implemented? I think, or
So for us, we're affected by something called the HFSS laws. So it's high fat, sugar, salt. So if you go to a big supermarket like Sainsbury's, you'll notice that by the tills, there are no longer chocolate bars. And that's because they put into place these laws which restrict products that don't fit this like really strict matrix, which is this nutritional matrix, which was created about 15 years ago. In my view, it's super outdated, but we actually saw that as an opportunity. So I created a product to fit the HFSS guidelines. So we created our kind of chocolate trail mix.
I was going to lead to the health reasons behind it, because government is thinking, okay, these things are bad, like especially, and I think even maybe I saw it in the news that I think advertising takeaways or like something after like 9 or 10 p.m. They're thinking about like you can't do that on TV.
Yeah,
which is
that started.
Yeah, which is incredible. Like, so there's a lot of kind of a debate in public health about that, because again, obesity, sugar related sort of diabetes. I think diabetes is a direct. I think it's one of the biggest reasons of illnesses all around the world,
Yeah.
leading to so many like heart disease. So I think it's, if public health is being targeted through that, I think from a consumer it is a good sort of sign. But you're very right. Everyone loves sugar.
Yeah.
How do you maintain that like the government is moving this way, public health is moving that way, ordinary consumer will love? And I think that's another thing I think about, let's say McDonald's as well. They pack so much dense calorie food, which is perhaps maybe not good for you, and like such a small package and such a small amount of money as well, and so quick. So it's fast, it is dense, and it's cheap. And now you have McDonald's all over the world. How can a brand who is complete 380 off of that, it's all the good things, I mean, for example, if you're taking raw ingredients who are good for you, you can't just produce them like overnight. They will take the time, so speed would not be there. Quality needs to be taken some time. When you really care for those things, it feels like the business aspect of this, it will not get satisfied at all. So how do you create a balance that, okay, it's great and it's good for you,
Yeah.
and it's sustainable as a business as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing I would argue about McDonald's is they also started out as being really innovative, in terms of their process and their attention to detail, which obviously now you look at it and think, okay, it's not great from a nutritional standpoint, but they were incredibly innovative, and their model for how they automated their production is kind of quite incredible. No matter what you can think about the nutritional of the food, which is not great now, obviously. But for us, we are very ingredient led. So, we don't take shortcuts when it comes to ingredients, where, a lot of big multinationals will look and say, we can shave 2p off a unit if we, use this oil versus, if we put palm oil in and reduce the amount of cocoa butter, for example. But for us, we find that we aren't going to be competing, with the sort of Nestle's out there at this stage. So for us, it's a point of difference. And the point of difference is having really high quality ingredients. And that's really how we set ourselves apart. And for that reason, we find that people, once they discover our products, they are incredibly loyal to our brand.
I'm here after 7-8 years, so definitely loyalty kicks in. I told you that, I mean, I still remember to that day that experience. There were so many other brands that we contacted and they supplied us so stuff as well. I think the only one who I I remember is literally Nibble, and there's another brand called Tenzing's.
Oh yeah.
They it's incredible how life turns out to be. Like they were just starting out, like it
Yeah.
was very kind of a beginning of the brand. So we reached out to them, and they're like, well, you know what? We'll send you like a whole crate of them. And I was like, a crate would literally mean like 12 of them or
Mm.
like 12. I get a call next day, or I think 2 days later, from like a truck driver. I'm outside your house, and I'm like, whoa, what are you doing here? And I open the window. It's literally like a 72-wheeler truck, and a whole pallet
A
comes out.
pallet? Oh my
So
goodness.
I was like, oh, I thought they were talking about a crate, not a pallet.
Brilliant.
I consumed them for like 2 years after, because there was not enough people in the audience I gave them everyone. I was like, just take it
Oh,
with
that's
you.
brilliant.
So, and I consumed it so much that for a very, very long time, once I ran out of them, I kept on buying them because your taste got developed.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the only thing. And they're quite good as well. Now they're so expensive. I'm like, I've decided like literally, I think I don't think so I ever had like a fizzy drink addiction.
Hmm.
I think Tenzing started all of that. And then it took me a while to kind of taper it
Yeah.
off and all of those things. And I think I wanted to ask you this question, that how much I mean, for them, it's a great marketing exercise. They got someone hooked on it for like a very long time. But for you, how much marketing plays into this? For example, you can create a great product, but if you don't know exactly how to appeal it to
Hmm.
masses, how great of a challenge it becomes if you don't know, let's say, marketing of a product.
I mean, the marketing is so important. I mean, for us, we've been really lucky because the product is so. We've created our Madagascan chocolate chips, which just might be a bit of a diversion, but when I was creating our snack bites, I couldn't find the perfect chocolate. So I was looking for a chocolate that was 80% plus cocoa mass, and I wanted something that was ultra processed free, so no emulsifiers. And I wanted it coconut sugar sweetened. So it didn't exist anywhere. So I created this chocolate. I mean, I literally looked all over the world, couldn't find it. So I created this chocolate specifically as an ingredient for our product, which just shows you how serious I am about the ingredients. But what ended up happening from that is that, the product was just incredible. So I thought, okay, we need to sell the chocolate on its own. And now that has just become our best-selling product and has taken on a life of its own. But what's been really great with that is that we work with a really large community of nutritionists. And because it is the product that they were looking for as well, it means that so much of the marketing is actually done in assistance with nutritionists. So they're recommending it to their clients, or if they're doing press, they're recommending our products as well. So that really helps, I think, in terms of the marketing efforts, because it's it's really strongly validated, and it's quite organic. My style, which might not necessarily be the best in terms of FMCG, is we're a bit sort of laid back in terms of our approach to sort of marketing. And we want something that really reflects our product, which is, as natural as possible. So word of mouth is something that works well for us. And because, like with our chocolate, it doesn't exist anyplace else. So it means that once people try it, they really don't have a replacement that they can find elsewhere, because they're little chocolate chips. So they're actually now the #1 bestseller on Amazon UK in the baking chocolate category. So we're outselling all the big sort of chocolate mafia. So we're outselling Barry Callebaut and all the big guys. So, I mean, that's like immensely satisfying, because we're competing against products that are full sugar, full junk. And so our cleaner, lower sugar product, because it is just really unique within that category, and it has a really, really high, repurchase.
Yeah. And you mentioned about the Madagascar chocolate. You have been, at least from the life I follow from far from Instagram, so you have been taking quite a few journeys recently, just exploring sort of a lot of things. So tell me about that side of Erin that really goes to Madagascar, if I'm not wrong, isn't it?
It was Papua New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry about that. All the way down there to find products and look for the new things, new innovations. how does that side come about, and how do you feed it into your products?
Yeah, I mean, that was a trip of a lifetime. So I was really lucky. I was invited by the UN as part of a trade mission, and they brought us to Papua New Guinea. There are about sort of 8 or so brands. Most were bean to bar chocolatiers, and I was in the kind of FMCG part. And it was just an incredible trip. So the whole aim was really to introduce us to cocoa farmers with a view to us purchasing cocoa mass from Papua New Guinea, which will help the local economy. I mean, it was just an incredible trip, and you know, anyone who knows me knows that this is 100% the type of trip that I love. So all of my friends were like, "Oh, this is such an Erin trip,"
Yeah.
as I just love anything which is, you know, complete adventure. And it was incredible. I mean, we were traveling. We had, I think, about 8 flights in like 11 days. It was quite an intense schedule, but I mean, we got to participate in this cocoa cupping ceremony in this region called East Sepik. And most of the farmers have never tried their own cocoa and chocolate. So what the organizers did was they managed to have chocolate made. So they did really small batches. There were probably at least 70 farmers who were there. So they made chocolate with each of the farmers' chocolate so they could try their chocolate for the first time with their cocoa.
Wow.
And it was incredible. So we were all in this this little building, and we just and all the farmers were kind of lined up in these long tables, so we were just going around and tasting everyone's chocolate. And what they did was they made it with the same exact recipe, so it was like a level playing field, so you could taste like for like. I mean, and it was an incredible experience. I mean, I've never eaten so much chocolate in my life, it has to be said. But, you know, it was incredible, you know, and it was such an honor to be with these guys, you know, when probably the first time they tried their product as chocolate. So yeah, I mean, it's completely done the job. I mean, we're looking at sort of NPD with hopefully using cocoa mass and some future products. But yeah, it was an incredible trip.
I mean, how does it work that, for example, let's say, if you can give me like a hypothetical new product, let's say you might be working on, how does it work for the people who don't know, sourcing the ingredient, the supply chain, the food science, and working with the legislation? Because if it's coming to UK, there's a different legislation going to US. Walk me through that kind of a mental journey. You decided, I'm gonna create this new line.
Yeah.
Go from there.
Okay.
How does it start?
So I would like to say that all of our products are created from lots of like market research, but that's like not how it's done. So it typically is that there's a product that I feel is sort of missing or would fit the current range. And like most products come from a need rather than a sort of want. So if, for example, I'm looking for something and we don't have it, then that tends to be where the product comes from. And then it really starts in the kitchen. So I do, you know, all of the recipes I've created from the kitchen to get the shelf stable. And you know, it is quite a journey, and food science can be notoriously unpredictable. So for science, you just assume that you're going to have, if I do A, I'm going to get this reaction, which sometimes it just doesn't really work how you anticipate. And certainly what sort of works on a small scale in your kitchen changes significantly when you scale up. So when you're making, you know, hundreds of kilos of batches, the food science changes, and like the way that products feed through machines, that changes. So it's really complicated. So it starts in the kitchen. You know, from the time I start in the kitchen, I already have like my general sort of sourced ingredients. So I'm starting from like a cocoa mass that I like the taste of. So I'm starting from that point. So I would have done some initial research before that, and then I go in the kitchen.
Would you get like ingredients from different places, or you just go to supermarket or something?
So the way that it works with our Madagascan chocolate, originally I was looking at a Ugandan cocoa mass that I really liked, and the manufacturer that we were working with to make the chocolate couldn't get a hold of that cocoa mass. So they kept bringing more and more cocoa masses for me to try. And I was just like Goldilocks, just none of them were quite right. I'm sure I was a complete pain. And then finally, we found the Madagascar, which of course, it's the top 1% cocoa mass in the world. Madagascar's it's so far off the coast of Africa. It's a microclimate, which is why you get like amazing ingredients like vanilla from Madagascar. And so once I got the mass, then I was trying to finesse the actual recipe. So in the case of our chocolate chips, I wanted, one thing that's really important with dark chocolate, particularly when you're trying to really go for larger mass adoption, is you want to really reduce the amount of bitterness. So I played around and I ended up adding more cocoa butter, which gives this like real creamy flavor. And also, Madagascan cocoa mass is notoriously less bitter, so you can use less sugar. So you kind of play around at that point. And then you then go to the manufacturer. And then you try to get a larger sort of commercial batch and see how that works.
Manufacturer is someone who has the factory or who has the supply chain with
who has the factory. So in the case of our chocolate, so we have our own facility now to make our snack bites. And that's a slightly different story. But with the chocolate, we leave that to the chocolatiers because that's really complicated and a whole different skill set and a whole different set of machinery.
Do we have those manufacturers in UK or are they abroad?
So our facilities in Surrey, but we work with a manufacturer in the Netherlands.
Okay. But just as a quick sidetrack, I know manufacturing in UK has been discussed quite a lot.
Yeah.
Like it used to be quite big, and now it's not there anymore. Do you, in the food industry, is the same as well? That for the manufacturers that you're particularly looking for, do you have to go outwards in Europe or somewhere else, or are there places in UK which you think are absolutely top notch in the world?
Well, I mean, we really struggled finding. So our snack bites are like little small coin shaped products, which again, because I didn't have any food manufacturing experience, I came to the product development in like a really weird sort of art director stroke, what just tastes really good point of view. So it means that I was approaching things in a way that I just thought like I wanted a certain size so I could eat them in the hallways on the way to meetings,
Okay.
So I had my own specs without being informed of like what's easiest manufacturing wise. So because I'm a brand person, I created, the whole deck, which was all around, our big circle is a big part of our brand. So when I tried to find a manufacturer, it became quite apparent that the shape of the product I created was actually really hard to manufacture. And that normally, you see balls, like total spheres, which I kind of discounted that because we have lots of chocolate chips and things, and those inclusions all fall to the middle, so you don't see them on the outside. So again, that was like art director me wanting my little cute coin-shaped products. But also, if you make something which is square or rectangular, it's much easier to manufacture because you're just cutting them a bit like you would cut up a brownie. So from the start, I had basically walked in and created this like really difficult product to manufacture, which from a shelf life point of view and from a pure production point of view. So we ended up having to set up our own manufacturing facility. And
that brings me to another, and for the listeners, the journey of making a product is still there.
Yeah.
Just doing a quick sidetrack. Your aunt calls you a Me Too girl.
Yeah.
And I think it ties to another story there when you were trying to create, and I think we talked about this before when we were on the call, that you wanted to create your own facilities and everyone is just like, this is just a no-go.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't find like a right word for it, but it's like just sheer stubbornness in the sense like, I just have to do this. It has to be done this way. How do you because for me, I think for businesses, we think that sometimes it's such a double-edged sword, because you don't know whether your conviction is right or not. only in the hindsight you'll be like, okay, this was, if it's right, oh my god, such a great story. If it's not, oh, this person was terrible.
100%.
How do you, someone who's at the top, who's leading, manufacturer tells you we can't do that at all. So you will do, and you go to another manufacturer. Three tell you not, five will tell you not. Most people will be like, you know what, maybe it's not possible. But you are, no, I'm just gonna make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure that that's always a good thing. Like you said, that so my auntie used to call me the me do girl because when I was in kindergarten, which is around like age 4 or 5, I insisted on walking myself to school. Like I did not want to be walked by anyone else. I was like, I've got it covered. I'm all good. And I think there's something, I've always been really tenacious, which again, I mean, there's a story which I kind of think about from when I was in school, when I was running track, which I always think with like equal parts of like cringe and sort of admiration, So I was a 400-meter runner, and my coach, he put me on the 300-meter hurdles. And I was not a great hurdler. I was a runner. So I was doing this race, and what happens with hurdling is if your footing gets off, then you tend to fall and it's really hard to get your footing back. So I was running a race, and at about the 200-meter mark, I fell down, hit the track, bloody knee, and I just kept going. But the thing is that I fell down probably about 3 more times, because once your footing's off, you just keep falling. And, everyone else had finished the race, and I literally just kept falling, and I finished the race to the end. And like, when I think about that now, I'm like, I don't know if that's just like a little bit crazy, or, there's a part of me that thinks, oh my gosh, that's so embarrassing that I did that, and then the other part of me is like, well, that does explain quite a lot about my personality, and I think, with the food stuff, it was, I mean, I'm super stubborn. And also I do have a bit of an issue with authority. So I think, there is something to be said about if someone says you can't do something in a certain way, I'm like, well, why not? And
Antennas go up.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna make
yeah.
it happen
I'm
now.
like, I'm going to show you I can sort it out. So what happened,
good.
on the food side of things is that, I mean, it took 4 years to find a way to scale up our products. So our snack bites, we started out manufacturing them by hand. So we were working with a facility in East London, and they were literally, we even had to make bespoke molds because, they didn't exist in the shape that I wanted. So they used to like make the dough and literally push it into each one of the molds and like flip it out, which is crazy when I think about it. So we spent about literally 4 or 5 years trying to find a way to find a machine that would work with our snack bites. And during that time, I mean, the number of consultants we paid who were supposed to be like manufacturing consultants, like biggest experts in the field, and no one could work out a way to do it. They just basically said, this is unmanufacturable at scale. And, part of the reason for that is that we have really big inclusions, and the way that it works with most machinery is you kind of mix up the dough like you would with a cookie dough, and then it's fed through an extruder, and there are these like tiny pins like screws in the extruder. So when the dough comes through, the inclusions will get ground down. So that's why with like most protein bars and stuff, when you look at them, they're just all one texture, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. I was like, well, no, that's just not going to work because we've got our chocolate chips. So that was like a really, really big problem is, we could find machines that could make the size, but it would grind everything down, or else they couldn't make the right shape. And I mean, it was, years went by, and I was like, this is a problem with this is like make or break, obviously. And then we just happened to find the right machine, but it was in the wrong manufacturer. And we didn't, we did a, test batch with them, and the ingredients that came back weren't the right ratio. So clearly they hadn't really been following the recipe. And because when you're small, one of the big barriers with manufacturing is that there are minimum order quantities. And when you're small, because you're balancing, I need 80% of my shelf life. So you can't make these really big runs, because if you can't sell it through, then you've got all that waste. And so basically we found the machine. And I just decided we were just going to have to set up our own facility. That was the only way to do it. So I got really lucky, got a personal loan to put a deposit down on this machine. I found some partners who we could share a facility with who would manufacture the product for us, and spent £60,000 getting this like beautiful extruder from Germany that had to be winched up into the first floor of a building, which
Wow.
I
Must be a
mean,
spectacle.
there were like videos of it coming through, and because it wouldn't fit through the door in the crate, so it had to be taken out of the crate. So it was literally forklifted up to the front. I mean, my heart was just
If it dropped.
if it dropped, yeah. But it worked, So
Aaron, can I quickly ask, like with these manufacturing facilities and with these machines, how expensive they can get? For example, um, I have no idea, but I have a vague understanding of, like, because we have a 3D printing business ourselves. So I understand the terms like, oh, how what extruding means and all of those things, and like how these
mm,
machines work. And you're very right. Like, I understand some of the delicacies of it. Like, you might make something absolutely beautiful, but viewers, I think most of you cannot see, but there's like a tissue box on our table in front of it, which is we printed it ourselves.
ah,
But if someone asks us to batch print it, 300 of them, I think the problems that are gonna come, like all the lines would go off and all of those things. But those we've seen that in that world, the costs of things are coming down, and they're bringing in these kind of like AI capabilities within physical machines,
mhm,
which is extremely remarkable.
mm,
That it will the contingencies that you have put in place, the software is designed to identify just those things. For example, if let's say for us the printing is like, the moment it starts making a bit of a mesh, instead of like creating the proper thing, it will just stop the whole thing, and let's notify it, like, so that thing is there. But with your facility and general in the industry, how expensive are these machines? Are they still at the point that it's not affordable for a lot of people
yeah. I
to?
mean, they're just not really affordable. I mean,
Okay.
because there are so few people who actually need these machines, you don't get that sort of mass. Um, like with 3D printers, people are now having them in their homes, and
Mm.
so I think by nature of that, the costs come down. But I mean, I've not seen anything. Like, I think like if anything, they're getting more expensive because obviously like almost none of them are made in the UK. So
Yeah.
you've got that to factor in. I mean, so for example, our snack bites, there are 6 little bites in a pillow pack bag. And I have been looking for years to try to find a way that we could pack them on our own site. But the problem is the type of machine that we need to pack them into those little bags. They cost about £300,000, and they're huge. Like, they go over 2 floors. So snack.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
You think, oh, this thing is like, oh, it's £5. How expensive would it be to make this?
Oh, it's so complicated. And the thing is, it just goes back to, I didn't make things super easy on myself. It's like if I had just gone back and made a snack bar instead of snack bites, it would have been so much easier, like infinitely easier.
I just said you would lose the distinction.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, it was all about, it being bite-sized, and yeah, that was really like part of the main USP beyond the nutritionals. So, I just didn't realize walking into it that I had set myself up for a much more expensive manufacturing and much more complicated journey. Because, for example, with the snack bar, they're called flow wrappers. I mean, you can pick them up for like 10 to 30 grand, so that's kind of manageable.
Yeah.
But,
That's why most chocolates are kind of in that shape. I guess
yeah,
it's cost effective to do that way.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I'm gonna bring you back to the manufacturing process. So you identified you want to make something,
Hmm.
starts in the kitchen. You reach out to manufacturer. Let's say you find someone who will do the whole thing for you.
Yeah.
What's the next step then?
Yeah, I mean, in our experience, most of the actual NPD is done before going to the manufacturer, and then we're bringing it to them, and they're seeing how they can scale up
NPD meaning
new product development. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
So that is one of those things that you have to basically have the product pretty much ready to go to bring to a manufacturer, which I never thought it worked that way. So we go to them, and then they then try to do a scaled up version. And that's when things tend to go quite wrong, is like in between the kitchen to the scale up, because it just changes so much when you're on machines. I mean, there are so many different factors that, I mean, if you change, like even the amount of like the texture and the liquid and the, like it changes when you're mixing on a really large scale. Even if you're using the exact same ratio as you were in the kitchen, it just performs quite differently. So like it might be wetter, like when you're mixing that up at scale, and therefore it'll go through the machines differently, or it might stick, or, you know, like for our product, there's a sweet spot of, you want it to be like a soft product, but it needs to be hard enough and robust enough to make it through the machine, to make it through the packing, and to go through the whole process so it's still in one piece. So it's not like little bits of crumbs in the bottom.
That's crazy, because essentially the math of recipes of two tablespoons in the kitchen, you know, you multiply that with, okay, if I'm doing this much batch and I'll just multiply that to that number, now you're looking at a completely different thing at the end.
Totally different.
It's not called food science, then it's just food art. Then.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no science to it. It's purely how you know. So you do that, and at that point in time, so what's the process of kind of identifying it? So like, do you have to pay for like these testings?
Yeah.
And
So
how expensive they can be?
So, I mean, they can be really, I mean, that depends upon the manufacturer. So that varies, but you know, you pay for a manufacturing trial, and then you need to do, so you'll get like a kind of smaller batch, and then you'll do like a full scale manufacturing trial. But then from the manufacturing trial, you then have to work out, because there's the production of the product, but then there's the packing of the product. And that's like a whole nother like manufacturing challenge.
It needs to be packed in the same facility, I
So
suppose.
ours aren't. So the
Okay.
chocolate is now, but not the snack bites, because of the limitations we have in terms of space and mainly cost, in terms of buying that like monster packing machine. So then you have to find a process to pack them into larger bags to then ship to the manufacturer. You know, we once had one batch, which was actually made by the manufacturer we had tried before we set up our own facility. And the product had just slightly stuck together when they packed it. So they must not have cooled it adequately before packing. So it arrived at the manufacturer, and there were just these like massive blocks. Like imagine all of our little snack bites that are about the size of a 1p coin, and they had just melded together.
Oh, that's horrible.
I mean, it's just they're and in my experience, it's always the stuff that you don't anticipate that goes wrong. So like typically you'll go into, you know, a new manufacturing, you know, some new product, and you'll think, okay, well, these are the catch points. So you kind of have already anticipated those, and you've kind of hopefully worked around those. And then there's always something that you don't expect that ends up being the real problem.
That's remarkable.
It's really
And
painful.
because when we as consumers just buy stuff from off the shelf, you don't really think about these things, and
No.
your decision is like microsecond decision.
Yeah.
And it's just so crazy. And I think that just makes you think that, just like with our media consumption, that, you know, the first 1.5 second or something, we like it, we don't like it. I think we are taking the same approach to our physical life as well. You look at a car, or you look at, especially with food items, you look at restaurants, and even I think there's a kind of a phenomena that I think I might be calling it wrong. I think it's called IRL marketing or something, in real life marketing. It's called. They're saying that it's a new phenomena where brands are not thinking that it's just so hard to compete on digital now, because of there's just so much noise. But at the same time, there's just so much expectation, and like you could spend, as you mentioned, like, so I'm just thinking like you're doing kitchen stuff, you're sourcing ingredients, you're paying for them, and there's just no sight of like a single penny of profit out of that just yet. So you do all of that, especially for physical
Yeah.
business, and the consumer is like, 1 second, oh, you know, they open the pack and they all gel together. Oh no, I'm not buying it. You lost them for another 3 months maybe.
Yeah. Well, there's a
It's crazy. It's crazy.
So I was lucky enough to meet James Bailey, who was the CEO of Waitrose. I met with him just before he started at at Waitrose, and he gave me some amazing advice. And actually, one of the stats he told me is that, which I'm going to get the stats slightly wrong, but that when consumers go into like a big supermarket, and let's say they're in the supermarket for 20 minutes doing like a normal weekly shop, I think he said it was like each consumer only reads 10 words in the entire store.
Wow.
Which is insane. So, his advice to me was, you have a lot of USPs. You need to choose like 1 or 2 maximum to have on the front of the pack, which was like, so, I mean, that just blew my mind. But the other thing he also said to me, which I have to say I think about all the time, is he said to me, he's like, you've got a really incredible product, an incredible brand. And he said, but it's going to take you longer because you're innovative. And he was so right, and it's something which, he had recommended that I read a few books, and you always hear about the kind of overnight successes, but as he said, when you're doing something in a different way, you're maybe using different ingredients, it takes longer. It just takes longer for the buyers to understand what you're doing, for consumers. But once you get it, then it takes. But that has been a source of comfort, for a while, because I'm like, okay, yeah, that tracks.
So let's say manufacturer has agreed, and you have done the trial. The trial has been perfectly fine, and then the packaging you mentioned is another piece, and we talked about how that can be sort of such a huge challenge. And let's say if that becomes okay as well, then the marketing becomes the challenge, I'm assuming.
Oh, no,
No,
we
okay.
have to go back. So,
I'll let you
yeah,
lead.
so not only is like packing the product a challenge, but it's the actual packaging design is really, so I tend to do that in-house, particularly the sort of look and feel. And for us, packaging has always been a challenge, which, you need to get something that's recyclable, which, we our brand product has a white background in terms of the packaging, so we had to find the right material so you wouldn't see the product through the white background. So there's like all these like little things that tend to be quite challenging. We created for our new chocolate trail mix, the one that's HFSS compliant, that has a window in it, and because I wanted people to be able to see at checkout, see the product. That has challenges, and then you have to try to put the window in the right place so that the window is always full with product. There's just always, the packaging is always a massive challenge, just the creation and finding the right spec of material to use.
And that's what consumers are going to look at and make their decision on, that if I'm in the chocolate section. And I think that's what to me is always so fascinating. Let's say in the snack and nibbling section, let's say you go to confectionaries, the variety. So when I was at uni, I worked at Waitrose as a Christmas temp and stuff. So I imagine working in the confectionery section and all of that, and I could just tell that there are some products they're like dark packaging, as like mint chocolate or something similar. They're all the way at the down, and no one's gonna pick on them. And then they're these shiny kind of red and transparent, like for example, like the Oreos. They have their own kind of a section. Like you'll find all the flavors around the same time. And then just from like me working there, I could just tell like there are certain products that for all the time they would just keep on running out, and always tend to be the ones which you could just reach just like in an arm grab. You don't have to really look up, don't have to kind of bend down to do that from your eyesight. And if I'm walking through an aisle, is alongside my eyesight, and it's a shiny product, chances are I'm just making that purchase. No looking at ingredients, no looking at the back of it. Oh, this looks okay. Chocolate chip, okay, pepper, let's just pick that. And to me, it's crazy that you are working in your kitchen, working with the manufacturer, working on the packaging, and you said you don't do market research. So how does this come about that you would know it will sell?
I mean, I should say when I say we don't do market research, I kind of go a lot on sort of instinct, I think, when it comes to what we should be working on. So it's not that we don't do any at all, but it is largely a sort of instinct thing for me. But I think, I mean, what you said about, getting things at sort of eye level. I mean, there's a reason why Oreo is there and not.
Yes.
So, all of that, there's a hierarchy, so there are things called planograms. So the buyer, they have like a map of where everything on the shelf has to go. So that goes then to the supermarket or goes to the store. So that has to be followed. So really, ideally, you're at sort of eye level. What tends to happen is after a few years, if you start at eye level, you might move placement because the buyers think, well, people know your brand enough, so you can, you
Yeah.
can attract people from different eye levels. But yeah, I mean, all of that
Well,
is.
Erin, I've seen so many brands now. They are digital first. Even they are kind of consumer brands. They're kind of a D2C. They're selling it through their
Mhm.
websites, and they have this kind of like strong communities behind them. That people just love those kind of stuff. How that is, you probably must have seen this phenomenon with other brands. What does it mean for you? Do you? I assume a lot of people, again, still all over the world, people still go to supermarkets, and it's, they're still a kind of a go-to, but food deliveries are a popular
Mm.
thing. I think they have been for like past 7 8 years now. Especially like they get you like a minimum order or something, and then you can. I prefer, to be honest, prefer that because I don't know, it's me or someone else, but I get overwhelmed in markets, especially supermarkets, that you get into, like, let's say, dairy section, especially, like, I mean, it's kudos to Waitrose, but they have like I think at least 30 to 50 types of yogurts, and man just wants to get yogurt. Give me the plain, and it's like 5%, and it's
Mm.
0%, and it's 25%. Like, it's like so much choices there available now, and I can imagine all these processes are need to be followed for that. The consumers are just like, they're just loving that choice.
Mm.
But I love the fact that you can just go online and just type in one, and you just get that. I think it's cost effective, actually.
Yeah.
um what's your kind of a strategy with this? That, do you play around with digital? Do you want to?
Oh yeah, I mean, we one of our very first retailers was Ocado, which we were so lucky. We love working with Ocado, and I was an Ocado shopper before, so I was like particularly chuffed to have got that listing. And for us, digital is actually really ideal because it's a
Mm,
really easy way to be able to do some education alongside, in the way that you can't do in the supermarket. So for example, we include things like infographics. So like
mm,
if you go and look on our products on Ocado now, you could go through and you'll see sort of 5 additional images, which, some of them will be more lifestyle-y, some of them will have some information about the nutritionals. So we work really heavily within the kind of digital space because um, it lends itself really well to new products. It's a good way for people to discover because you have more dwell time because you're sitting
mm.
there in the comfort of your home and you're on the computer, and so you will be reading more than 10 words when you're shopping on places like Ocado. So
So ideally, yeah, this is a kind of a dream come true, that you have a brand that is just purely D2C. The people just go onto your website. As now I really know from Shark Tank, watching it quite a lot, that the moment they hear that the sales are 90% from just their website, they just love it.
yeah.
And the moment they say like, oh, we have to go to retail, everyone's like, oh, we are out. This is too much money.
I mean, the lure of retail, though, when you're an FMCG business, is real,
Yeah.
and I mean, for me, my mission is really to help people eat healthier food and make it just a bit easier. So it's really important to be in retail because particularly with snacks, I want to be in the impulse section so that when you're out and about, there's a sort of healthy but really tasty option that's available.
Yeah.
So that's really, so that really is a big part of our strategy, and what's important is to make it available to people.
That's amazing. And so you've done the kitchen trial, manufacturers have approved, packaging has been done, marketing, you're in retail. How do you gauge the success, and what does, like, industry standard kind of investment needed to get a new line out,
Mm,
versus, okay, then because then you have to price it accordingly,
yeah.
so you're incurring all these costs with manufacturers, and that's just trials. So how do you kind of, like, what is the life cycle of, like, a new line coming out, and then you actually taking that profit, that to make the next line, I suppose. How long does that take, and how much investment people to pay?
I mean, it totally varies on both counts, you know. So some products come together really quickly. Well, but quickly that might be sort of 8 months or something.
Oh wow, so whole year probably just.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes it's, you know, years. It really, really does depend. Yeah, so it's but for, you know, for us, I think we're super scrappy, you know, and I think that's, you know, I've always been a bit scrappy, and I can, for me, I have so many ideas that I haven't yet executed. So rather than there being like a shortage of like, oh, what should we do next? I've got things lined up in my head that I want to do already, and it's more of just holding back because of cash constraints, etc. So, so that I guess is a good place to be in terms of having, you know, having the NPD in the pipeline. But yeah, it's a really, really long, and then you've got, so you know, you get the product and then you have to get the listing. So, I mean, obviously we can stick it on our site straight away. It can go on, you know, on Amazon straight away, but then it's like, you need to get the listing. And what happens?
What's the listing, sorry?
So that's how you get into the supermarket. So that's the kind of space on the shelf, or, you know, so that's when a place like Waitrose or Ocado will say, yes, we want to sell your product.
You have to pay for it.
Well, no, but it's what's really complicated is that so each category has a different time that it reviews the products, and it's never announced. So you're just supposed to magically know when the listing, that sort of window is coming up for the review. And it typically happens like once a year. So for example, if I bring a product out and that category isn't being reviewed for 8 months, there's nothing I can do to speed that up. You know, that is just, so if my goal is to be in that retailer, I have to wait 8 months before they look at it. And then they look at it, and then there's like a few more months before it'll actually go on the shelf.
How does that relationship with you and, I mean, I already know, I think with manufacturers can be quite complex, but I suppose the very easy solution to, not cost effective, but the solution to would be just build your own thing. But with supermarkets, I believe it's so hard because they own that distribution, and not by the virtue of them being really great or anything. Because, you know, albeit Waitrose, albeit Ocado, Ocado doesn't have physical stores, but let's say Sainsbury's, and for listeners abroad, these are just UK retails. Um, it's just the sheer nature of humans for ages that we've been going to bazaars from Egypt, from all of that. Like, you gonna go to a physical place to check it out and buy it. They all have the same kind of a shelves. Of course, the different varieties and the way they project themselves, there's a bit of a marketing on top. But it seems to me that for makers of products it's a constraint to them. They're more makers, there's a bit more marketing that needs to be involved in all of that, and these channels are a bit of a kind of a choke points
Oh
that
yeah.
they can make or break your business.
100%. I mean, there are some, I mean, again, because I came from a non-food background where a lot of startups in the food world that have success really early, most of those people have worked in food, the food industry before that, and they have the contacts and a lot more knowledge, where I had to kind of just learn everything as I was going along. And with the one thing I never understood until I had this business is that when a product is on sale in Sainsbury's, it's not Sainsbury's that's paying for that promotion, it's the brand.
Yes,
You
I
know, and
know
it's
that
one of those
now.
things that, like, I don't know how I didn't know that. It seems kind of obvious now, but and you know what happens is your supermarket buyer will say, you know, you need to spend a minimum of 10 grand this year, right? And so that's money we are paying the retailer.
And they can quote you whatever they like.
Oh yeah. It is
That's a
not
monopoly.
it
It's
is
just a
not
monopoly.
it is not a fair and equal relationship. You know, you have to so that's called trade spend. So that will be for things like banners, like on websites.
It's
That'll be
That is
for
crazy for me
shelf
to
markers,
imagine.
which
It's
are like the little, oh yeah, I mean, there's so much cost that goes into maintaining that sort of relationship, and that doesn't even count the kind of promos. So, you know, you need to be on special offer, you know,
So
a few times.
I set my business up this year. Okay, we're gonna do 30,000 for marketing and everything. Comes 2027, they'll tell me minimum 100K spend, otherwise you're out.
Yeah, I mean, it probably won't be 100K if you're just starting, but yeah, I mean, so what? A colleague always told me that the kind of rough way to estimate what the trade spend should be is it tends to be about 15% of the total sales. You're then sending back to the supermarket and trade spend.
And that's the money they just keep in pockets.
Yep. Yeah, I mean,
It's
it
just,
is. I mean, the other thing to bear in mind as well is that obviously the big corporations, you know, the PepsiCo, those big companies, they've got special relationships with all those retailers. So they are not paying the same price that we are. You know, they're
oh,
getting those things for
another thing
free,
on
you
top.
know?
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
So, I mean, it is definitely stacked against especially startups. You know, it's really, really hard. And you can imagine, I mean, one of the biggest problems is that, you know, buyers are inundated with submissions, you know, so you know, you need to have the right timing. You need to, I mean, so much of it is luck when it comes to listings. You know, like for example, you know, you'll see a buyer who absolutely loves your product, but they've just reviewed that category and then they leave, and then the next buyer doesn't like the product for whatever reason. You know, and for us, you know, something that's really a consideration is, you know, we are genuinely a healthy product. So if you have a buyer that does not like healthy products, you know, so they just won't like it, you know. So if, for example, your buyer has a really high sugar diet, a lower sugar product like ours is not going to hit that kind of sweet spot for them, you know. So
I think it's just a bit concerning from a consumer perspective, speaking to a manufacturer of good that you would consume, that I think the government is doing, especially I think in UK, perhaps the right thing, that as a consumer, I'm spending, if I'm just reading 10 words in a market, and though that experience has been designed more or less against me, where the manufacturers of food with high sugar content, they have special relations and everything. No, I want something healthy, but they have been kind of phased out by the pure nature of not capital not being available to them. So yeah, I mean, we don't use swear words on the podcast, but I know what's coming into my head. Like it's not ideal. So,
no.
but wouldn't I think, would you urge people like general public to perhaps listen to this conversation and take into consideration that, do go find the people that you like. For example, I generally tell you, for us, it's been an absolute experience that, um, for listeners, for the podcast is been filmed in Southwest London, and they're all big retailers around. That's perfectly fine. We've shopped them. I've all my life I've been shopped in Tesco's and everything. But recently, and for the past like year or so, I've been shopping at this like kind of a local supermarket. It's like it's not like a corner shop, but it's like they have like 4 or 5 of them in London. But it's like they get new kind of stuff every day. It's very like, it's Greek, it's Turkish, and it's a couple of other sort of things all mixed together. And sometimes you just never find the same thing again.
Yeah.
And initially I was like, why would we, get ourselves used to this thing when we won't? And now just by interacting with them more and more, that is the sustainable thing. Like they get only seasonal fruits,
Yeah.
because in nature, things just not available 24/7, 365. But I think as consumers, we're just so used to this choice, especially in, let's say, in Western Europe and let's say in America. This is not perhaps, I mean, I feel like now it's literally everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And I think it is not good for you.
Definitely.
I think you got to be a bit more sensible with your choices, and and I think as you have designed it, a bit more deliberate with what you put in your mouth.
Yeah. I mean, I think though the government could be doing so much more to make these options more
Yeah.
readily available. I mean, one thing that, like as you know, the market's really stacked against startups, and startups tend to bring the innovation to the market, because we're agile and we're quick moving and we're a bit scrappier.
Yeah.
And the government could be doing so much more to encourage the availability of healthier products within the market. For example, I think all certain types of products should all be zero rated for VAT. That would bring the cost down by 20%. That's like, that's an automatic thing that the consumer that would seriously influence, their choices. I mean, most of our products are zero rated, but I think in terms of the general market, it's quite important. In terms of research and development, I mean, there are R&D tax incentives, but they've been seriously reduced. I mean, it's funny because the government increased the amount of R&D refunds you can get if you're a large corporation, but they've reduced it for small businesses. And I mean, we had an R&D tax inspection, which went on for about 6 months. And, it was so much work. We had to bring all of our literally receipts, labs, everything. And it was just for a refund of £2,500, and
It
it was
probably costed them more to do the inspection.
100%. It was about 6 months work for, the accountancy team and, me pulling together all the data, and it was all cleared and it was all fine. But we are literally not going to do another tax refund again because it's just not worth the amount of effort. And the thing is, that's what they're really trying to do, is they are really trying to, disincentivize people from actually taking these grants up, which is obviously then going to hit the innovation, on the ground.
And what's the future looking like? What are you actually sort of doing, and what's the kind of a hopes and be? And from the kind of a different players, and for let's say from manufacturers to marketers to even to the government, what do you expect as someone who's been in the industry for a while and understands like the complications can be? What are your advices to these? Let's say if someone is listening to this, that make it. Of course, you mentioned that make it a bit more sustainable for startups. My mind was just thinking like a new supermarket needs to kick out, which is just really designed for that. But then I'm like, in its saturation, it will become exactly like any other supermarket because it's like. It's just not designed for that kind of an environment. It's just designed for what it is at the moment.
Yeah.
Digital is a bit more, I think, innovative.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a lot of things that consumers can do, which, I mean, first and foremost, it's kind of supporting small business, because really the larger the business can grow, that's when, they have a lot more influence within the kind of micros that kind of ecosystem.
Yeah.
And a lot of that can be really simple, and it doesn't have to cost a lot. Like, for example, if you like a product, review it. That's like my number one tip. That is, honestly, you will never believe what a big difference those reviews make online. And there is another statistic, which is something like people are 80% more likely to put a bad review online. So that typically people tend to review when they're dissatisfied rather than when they're happy.
Oh, wow.
So that's something to consider as well. So if you like a product, review it. That's like one of the best things you can do just to support a brand that you like. Post about it on social, which we're really lucky because we get so much love on social media from people who just really love our products. We have we work with probably over 30 different nutritionists. So they are, very regularly posting about our product. And I have to say, out of like every part of the business, for me, that's the most satisfying part is, when I get a little ping on my phone and it's someone who's, posted a video or they've posted, something about the product and how they love it and how they, it's their kids love it or whatever. I mean, that's like 100% the best part of the job for me.
That's remarkable. And I think capital investment needs to be there for this as well. I think for healthy food items, I mean, purely what I'm thinking, because I think you had some investors as well, which were really kind of from big brands. I think John Eggleton, I think it might be the one as well. That these people really kind of see something in the entrepreneur. They come around and they support you, and I think that's where Nibble is still working out today. But let's say those supports were not there, it might be a completely different outcome. The world wouldn't have a more kind of a healthy brand out there.
Yeah.
So I think support needs to come from all sides as well, especially if the product is good for someone's health.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we were lucky because, John, he was the MD of United Biscuits, and he saw what we were doing and just loved it. And I mean, I'm pretty sure we're the only food product that he's invested in today. So But again, he was someone who was type 2 diabetic and reversed it with his healthy eating. So we hit that kind of spot for him. He saw what we were doing, and he's fantastic. He's become, a really good friend. One thing I will say is that for the last probably 4 years, I've just been bootstrapping. So we haven't had any investment for years and years. And a lot of that has been, we've been maneuvering the cocoa crisis, which
yes, you mentioned. Tell me more about it, please.
Yeah, so due to really poor weather and also some plant disease and other things, there's been a huge spike in the price of cocoa. So the price has gone up by about 300% over the last 2 years. So literally 3 times what it was before, which is why when you go into supermarkets now, you'll see that, even really low cocoa-based products like Cadbury, they're locked away now. Yeah. And so that has been really, really challenging. So, and because,
why. Okay.
Yeah, so that just drove the price, and it still hasn't, it's gone down a little bit, but but
is it like a natural disease that came around, or is it just man-made?
So it was natural, and then there was also a weather problem. So the problem with the plants cocoa, it grows on a tree. So anything that had any sign of this disease had to be burnt down, and they were then having to raise within about a mile and a half because they didn't want the disease to spread. And it takes 2 to 3 years for a tree to grow to the size that can produce the fruit that the cocoa comes from. So this is not a kind of fast moving, this isn't going to change really quickly. So that's been difficult to maneuver. And for us, our product is 81% cocoa. So
it hits the supply chain directly.
Yeah. So in terms of the cost, obviously if your product's 20% cocoa, you're not going to be as affected cost wise. So when I look at how much, some of the milk chocolate products have gone up, they're slightly taking the mickey with that because some of them are disproportionately increased. But yeah, so we've kind of weathered all of that, and that has been a total challenge. But I think, what's happened is that through all of that, because consumers had to get used to paying more for chocolate. So I think people, now are appreciating the quality more. So, they're like, okay, if I'm paying more for chocolate anyway, I want really good quality chocolate, responsibly sourced and well made and really great tasting products. So I think that's been one good positive note to it all. But yeah, it's been so challenging.
And it's just been so fascinating being in conversation with you regarding this, because I don't think so I'm ever gonna go into a supermarket and pick up a piece of chocolate or cocoa again in the same way. That, to me, this flashback of this conversation will always be there, that I'm picking up this, what does it really mean to, buy this? And we have this tradition on the podcast where we ask the guests, what's the kind of a piece of literature that they would advise to a listener or a viewer that has been the most fascinating, the most kind of helping to them, to their cause, to their life. And what we tend to do is we buy the book and we share it with the person. They can be anywhere in the world. We'll ship it to them, or a digital copy or whatever, and try to connect you with that person, hopefully, if they are interested.
Cool.
So if you have something that you would like to share, we'd love to hear.
Yeah. It's funny because I did a literature degree at Civ Uni. So I used to only really read fiction for a very long time. And it's now in my adult life, I just read so much nonfiction. And having not known this question in advance, just off the top of my head, I've been reading a lot of Tim Ferriss.
That's really good.
So, Tools of the Titans that's been a really, really, that's a book which it just gives you really small bits of advice from some people who are top of their game. So that I really enjoyed.
That's brilliant. We'll make a note of that, and we'll find someone to send that book to.
Erin, Tools for the Titans. I can't remember the exact term, but yeah.
We'll take a look. It should be okay. Erin, thank you so much for being in
Thank you.
conversation. It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for sharing the such detailed information on what it really takes to sort of bring something into market. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. Nice to see you.